Do you love the Tabernacle Choir? This year, the choir's music is everywhere you are. Listen to your favorite choir songs and music and the spoken word anytime you want on Alexa by simply enabling the skill.
Alexa, play music in the spoken word.
Now playing music in the spoken word.
You can also download the Tabernacle Choir app, subscribe to the choir on YouTube, listen on Spotify, and have access to all their wonderful music. Happy listening.
Queen Carvania stood haloed by the morning sun. An army hung on her every word.
My champions, I have sold my chariot on Carvana. 'Twas a lovely SUV, an inexplicably queenly offer. They're even coming to the castle to collect it. Tonight, we feast! An offer you can feast on. Sell your car today on Carvana. Pickup fees may apply.
Don't miss your chance to win big every week on the KSL Sports Zone. Next week, you can win tickets to see Motley Crue with performances by Tesla and Extreme at Utah First Credit Union Amphitheater on September 21st. Listen to the KSL Sports Zone all day Wednesday for your chance to win.
Motley Crue? Yeah. Girls, girls, girls.
Long way from the country you're listening to now, PK. And yet a part of your youth, our youth, many people's youth.
Top 5 songs are country in a Billboard. First time ever.
There it is, taking over the world.
I just know my stuff.
See?
I converted 15 years ago. Going to see a country star this week at Sandy Amphitheater. Looking forward to it.
DJ PK, and we're joined now by Steve Bartle, Ute insider for KSL Sports. Steve, good morning.
Morning, fellas. How we doing?
Great. How about you?
Good, man. Ready to start the week. We'll be up at practice here in a couple hours. So, yeah, man, good times.
I'll see you there, and I appreciate last week when you gave me a full body hug, but don't do that again this week.
Well, PK, I just finished up at the gym. I figured a little arm wrestling match today, maybe a little bit, you know?
Yeah, my ribs are still sore.
No, you said you were kind of sweaty, too, so arm wrestling won't be able to get a good grip, you know? It's
hot out.
It's 100 degrees, and you're making your own gravy, Steve.
Yeah, man, it's, looking forward to seeing you up there, PK.
So the big thing is, the 5 offensive linemen, and we know that several of them got a lot of on-the-field experience last year because the Utes had a lot of good games in which they could rotate guys in. Now, it wasn't with the games on the line and all that stuff, although they did play in the bowl game. So what do you take from that as far as a bunch of guys who got dozens of snaps last year, what weren't starters? How does that translate into when they've got to line up when the game is on the line and you're going against the first-team defense?
Yeah, that is the big question mark for Utah is that offensive line. And, Coach Gross shared with us at his media availability last week is that he feels he's got 10 offensive linemen that they feel comfortable with that could play, and so, while that's encouraging on one hand that they feel they have 10 guys, they're 10 deep, it's about finding that best combination of 5. And, with the guys that played last year, there were a couple of guys, Soloto Amoyai and Keith Olson, that played, a combined 800-ish snaps last year because they were, utilized as 6th and 7th offensive linemen. And Utah liked that personnel package last year, used it quite a bit. And, those 2 guys are going to be key figures in sort of setting the examples and how things are done. And so I think it's valuable that obviously that Utah was able to rotate those 2 guys in pretty consistently each and every week. And then, as you mentioned, there were a couple other guys, Zeraway Williams and Alex Harrison, where those guys, got some mop-up duty, and Utah had a lot of mop-up duty last year. And so those guys, also gained some valuable experience getting on the field, in a game day atmosphere at Rice-Eccles Stadium or on the road. And yeah, it's not the same as, being in the heat of the competition, in those first half and third quarters, but still to get on the field, to kind of get into a certain sort of get to a level of comfort, performing on the field under the bright lights, I think is valuable. But, clearly there's still significant questions around the offensive line, and, the experience that they gained last year is still fairly minimal. So I think that is the big question mark for Utah in fall camp, is finding the starting five, finding 3 or 4 players that you feel can, round out your depth, potentially create even a rotation, and move forward from there. In terms of, the makeup and maybe some of the strengths of this group, I feel like Utah has some pretty solid athletes up front where, pass protection might be the strength of this group. My question is, how physical are they going to be, in the run game? That's what Utah's offensive line was last year. They were, clean, assignment sound, and physical, overwhelmingly physical, outside of a couple matchups. And so, that's going to be the big question mark. They've got to establish a certain level of physicality, and that's going to be the key over the next couple of weeks now that the pads are on.
When Kevin McGivern, offensive coordinator, talks about Devin Dampier and finding out what's best for his skill set, what is he going to find out, and what might be different than last year? Because it looked like last year's offense was pretty well set up for his skill set, although they were running the ball behind a dominant offensive line, so that makes things pretty simple and straightforward. But maybe Morgan has appetite for more risk than Kyle did. So what's this going to end up looking like?
Yeah, I think I'm kind of fascinated to see what it actually looks like. We got to see a lot of the offense in spring ball. We got to watch a lot of practice, and it was probably due to the fact that it was spring ball, but we saw a lot of passing game. We saw, we didn't see as much run game as we saw the year previous in spring ball. And that probably is due to wanting to limit the level of physicality that you're playing with in spring, but also I think it is kind of indicative of where they want to take this offense. And so with Dampier, he came from New Mexico, and the big question was, how is he going to improve his touchdown to interception ratio? And lo and behold, he comes to Utah where there was a lot of talent, up front at the skill positions, maybe not the elite talent, but certainly more than he had at New Mexico, and at least at the skill positions. And, for Dampier, it was about becoming more of an efficient decision maker, taking care of the ball. And I think that was something that he really embraced in coming to Utah. Well, now it's, the offensive line has moved on. I think now it's about, kind of, going back to the closet and finding that Superman cape, playing the way that he did at New Mexico. It's about now marrying that efficiency, that decision-making that he developed last year, while also embracing a little bit more of that, playmaker at quarterback like he was. And he was still really good last year, doing it as a dual-threat quarterback, finishing with over 3,300 yards and 34 touchdowns. But he's going to have to likely create a little bit more than he did last year. He's not going to be able to sit in the pocket for 5-6 seconds, without pressure bearing down on him. There's likely going to be pressure in his face consistently, and he's got to overcome it. And for Dampier, he understood what this season is going to ask of him. He's trimmed up about 10, 15 pounds, so he's slimmer and back to the playing weight he was at New Mexico. He was playing last year at around 220. And I think that's going to kind of give him that he was elusive last year, but I think just kind of getting back to what we saw in New Mexico a little bit more. And then again, it's about the decision making and embracing some of this passing game stuff. And I think that's where, Dampier's, we can only assess like what we've seen, what we've heard throughout the offseason. But it seems like Dev took the offseason really seriously in working on, working within the playbook, getting out to the, setting up player run practices and working quite a bit with his receivers to develop that chemistry. So, he did all that he could this offseason to put himself in position to take that next step as a quarterback. And that's going to be, we'll see what that actually looks like this season once they get under the bright lights and they kick off and all that. But that's sort of where they want to take this, is they want the ball in Dampier's hands. They want him to be that, that playmaker, that efficient decision maker, and just be that quarterback that they need to help them contend in the Big 12.
Evening. Buyer's remorse. Buy a new car? I'll be moving in. Let's get started.
Sorry, I think there's been a mistake. I bought it from Carvana.
You what?
Yeah, great price. I even have 7 days to love it or return it.
So there's no...
No buyer's remorse. More like buyer's rejoice.
I guess I'll let myself out. Congratulations. I mean it.
Buyer's rejoice. Buy your car today on Carvana.
Limitations and exclusions may apply. See our 7-day return policy at Carvana.com.
Compared to last season, how do you think the new offensive regime is going to utilize Ficklin?
That's a great question, PK. I think Bird, he's going to be kind of a key piece to the offense. He accounted for 13 touchdowns last year, and not all of those were in mop-up duty. I think only a handful of those, came, late in the fourth quarter. He played a lot last year in the thick of the competition coming in for Dampier, and obviously, Dampier's health kind of contributed to that and allowed Ficklin to get on the field as a quarterback. I think this year, you could see his role expand to becoming more of a versatile weapon while still, incorporating him as a passer. And I think it's going to be interesting to see, how exactly they utilize him. But I do think they want to get him on the field and do some different things. I think, they want to involve him in the passing game as a receiver. They want to, get him in the backfield and potentially hand the ball off. He is just a dynamic athlete that I think Utah is going to explore, a lot of different ways that they can get him on the field, with Dampier still on the field as well. So, he's going to be, a pretty significant piece to the offense this season, which, too, I think is still geared around developing him as a quarterback because, he is the guy that is expected to take over once Dampier's career comes to an end.
Parker's talked about being not just a 1,000-yard rusher, but what about 1,200? And there's people wondering about 1,500 if he averages 100 a game. Do you think there are that many carries in it in the run game this year for him?
Yeah, I think that's going to be really interesting with Parker and what this run game looks like. Like, I do think he is set up to be the undisputed, top running back. I don't think we're going to see a situation like we saw last year with N'Keary Rodgers, carrying the bulk of the load, early on in the season. This is going to be Parker's, backfield from the beginning of the season on. And, what he showed, over those last couple of weeks was, truly dynamic playmaking. And I think there's a lot of, excitement around what he can become in this offense. I don't think Utah is as concerned with getting him to 1,000 or 1,200. And frankly, it's a goal that Parker has, but he's also acknowledged that he's more focused on the team aspect. And so I think 1,200 yards, yeah, it's a bit greedy. It's a bit high. But I think 1,200 total yards, I think that's going to be really doable for him because it sounds like McGibbon wants to incorporate the running backs in the passing game quite a bit more than what we saw last year under Jason Beck. And I think that's an area of the game where Parker can actually be, really dynamic and expand his skill set and production. So, I think he's certainly capable of getting to 1,200 rushing yards. He has the athleticism. He has the big playability. But I think to your point, DJ, is what is that workload going to be like? When you have a dual threat quarterback like Dampier and like Bird Ficklin, they're going to account for a lot of carries. Can he get to 150, 160, 170, 80 carries? If he can get to 170, 1,000 yards is definitely going to be within reach. It's just, does he get there? That's going to be a big question. And I think with him starting the season as the unquestioned RB1 and the guy that they want to feature, I think it's certainly, doable to get to that number. But the presence of two dual threat quarterbacks that Utah also wants to involve in the run game in Dampier and Ficklin, that's also going to take some carries away from him. So I think 1,200 yards is definitely doable for him. Total yards, rushing is going to be a little greedy.
That's what I'm interested to see with Dampier. We saw at New Mexico, he was lighting it up big time. And, he had a very good season at Utah Shore, for no doubt about it. But we're expecting more. But at the same time, Scalley has kind of dropped, I don't know if they're hints, but just inclinations of getting the ball downfield much more than they have been in the past. He's willing to not experiment, but see how it goes. So I'm wondering how Dampier is going to balance that, because of the fact that I always thought this team with him at quarterback, when it's third and short, is virtually unstoppable, because it's almost impossible for him to not get 2 or 3 yards virtually anytime he wants. At the same time, they want to get the ball downfield. How do you think all that's going to balance out?
Yeah, I think that's going to rest on the shoulders of Dampier to become a sound decision maker in those moments. That is going to be the big key for him. When we were talking about things that have to happen this season for Utah, one of the key factors for me was Dampier, increasing, the rate at which he's making decisions. He's got to make quick decisions to get the ball out of his hands, first and foremost, to protect the offensive line. But then, too, deepening his understanding of when to take those shots and when not to, when to tuck it. That's going to be, a big determining factor on, one, how explosive this offense is, but also how efficient it is. That's got to be on Dampier to really make it a point of emphasis to improve his decision making. They've upgraded that wide receiver room where they now have, players in that room that can threaten, the intermediate and deeper areas of the field way more consistently than they could last year. I think there was a ceiling on the passing game on how efficient down the field they could be. They just didn't have the guys that could attack and get deeper down the field consistently. Now with Braden Pagan, with Kyrie Scholes and Ricky Johnson added to, a Larry Simmons and some of these other players, they now have players that raise the ceiling a little bit on, how consistently they can push the ball down the field. There's obviously a lot of criticism of Dampier and his arm strength and, his ability to push the ball down the field, but he was incredibly efficient and accurate in the 10 to 19-yard range. And, now you're going to have receivers that can access those areas of the field much more frequently, much more consistently, and that's going to help Dampier push the ball down the field a little bit more, even just pushing it, from 9 yards to 12 yards in terms of the average depth of target. Now you're pushing it 15, 16 yards down the field more consistently, which is just going to expand the passing game. So I feel like that's where Dampier has to develop is, one, his decision-making, and then his ability and chemistry with those receivers, in the intermediate areas of the field.
Well, we just spent an entire segment talking about the offense. How about that? Not a defensive question in there. That's pretty solid work by us, don't you think?
I think it's what everybody's curious about. Obviously with Colton Swan taking over, there's some intrigue there, but I think everybody wants to see this offense because it has been a lot of receiver talk, and Scalley hasn't been shy to talk about it. It's what the people want to hear, DJ.
Exactly.
I agree.
And that's why we did it. Steve, thanks so much. We appreciate it. We'll have you back to talk defense later, but that's just what we say before we talk offense again for an entire segment.
Amen. Appreciate you guys.
Thank you, Steve. Steve Bartle, Utah Utes insider for KSL Sports. You can follow him at KSLSports.com and the KSL app. He's writing stuff. He's got videos up. He is up there living and breathing Utes nonstop.
Oh, yeah, we got two guys up there every
KSLSports.com.
day, man. Josh Furlong also.
Have to get Josh on the show as well.
We did last week.
DJ and PK, it's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. When we come back, rumors being addressed officially on social media. It's a new era. It's not how things worked in the 20th century, PK. We'll get to that next. Stay with us.
Best thing that's ever happened to you financially. Go.
Easy. Sold my car on Carvana. Amazing offer.
Really? I hit 200 on the scratcher.
Did the scratcher come to your house and hand you a check?
No.
How many scratchers did you hit to get that? I hit a button on Carvana.com once.
Okay, that's fair.
It's like the lottery, except you always win.
Not like the lottery at all, actually.
Exactly. Inexplicably good. Offers worth bragging about. Sell your car today on Carvana. Pickup fees may apply.
Cowboys fans, training camp is here, and your official season blanket has arrived. Minky Couture is now the official blanket of the Dallas Cowboys. So when Cowboys fans want the real season blanket, they want Minky Couture. From the couch to kickoff, wrap yourself in award-winning ultra plush comfort that feels like a win before the first snap. With sizes from infant to grande, Minky Couture makes every game day warmer, bigger, and more legendary. Get the blanket worthy of the star. Shop now at minkycouture.com. Minky, M-I-N-K-Y, Couture, C-O-U-T-U-R-E.com. And get your official Cowboys blanket from Minky Couture.